We're here to talk about the Gold Cup. Group stages are done. The quarterfinals take off tomorrow, guys, and we have on the rise here. Lane, good to see you again. No, we're not mincing words today. We're getting right into the action because I haven't slept in 2 days. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna vibe it out until we fall asleep. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. Pretty good yourself.
The sleep is for healthy people, which I'm not right now. But we're
Exactly.
here to talk about the CONCACAF Gold Cup group stage. Yes, we're Canadian, so we're going to be a little bit more on the Canadian side for a bit. But we are going to talk about the tournament as a whole, how we've seen it, teams that have, I think, our surprise team and our disappointing team of this group stage so far. They go into the quarterfinals, but overall thoughts, like when you look at the Gold Cup, especially when we had it with the backdrop of the Club World Cup happening in the U.S. while the Gold Cup is happening. How have you found the Gold Cup here? Has it met your expectations from on the pitch, but then also from an experience? From just the crowds and such, or has it kind of fallen as you thought it would based off of what the Club World Cup drawing away from it?
I think it's been what we might have expected. Unfortunately, the supporters probably are battling between going to see the Club World Cup, going to see the Gold Cup, because
Mhm.
there's of course Mexican sides within the Club World Cup. So that probably takes some supporters away from the Gold Cup as well. But there's been some really good turnouts. Like you look at the Guatemalan supporters, and they always have an amazing group of supporters that come watch. And that's going to be a big test for Canada, which we'll get onto. But
Mhm.
their supporters have turned up really well, and you have some other nations that always turn out and have some great fan support. And just in general, the game, and yes, some games for the CONCACAF sides have been ugly, have been dirty, but other games have been very fun to watch, very exciting, very entertaining, especially Group A with Mexico, Suriname, Costa Rica, and DR. And it was just very fun to watch some of these matches so far in this tournament. Yes, there's been other games that have been a bit on the boring side, especially in Group D with the United States.
Mhm.
But you've had a lot of surprise packages in this tournament from Suriname and Dominican Republic, and other sides that have been on the poorer side, especially in Canada's group. But it's been a fun tournament to watch as a whole. I've preferred watching the Gold Cup personally, which might be surprising to say, over the FIFA Club World Cup. But it's just because I love international football and the passion some of these players give in the CONCACAF Gold Cup.
No, I can understand that point. I think for me, for the CONCACAF fans that we are, I think the Gold Cup will always matter a little bit more to us. Yes, the Club World Cup might get more of the casuals that'll watch it, and that's important. You have a World Cup coming to the region next year, so getting them a touch. I think Mo would always say it. Musa would say it, where he's just like, I think this is a great it's a great just tease for understanding like how different cultures embrace their teams, right? You got to see the Brazilian fans out there supporting all their sides. Sundowns, South African side, you see the crowd supports for the North American side, the North American casual fan who maybe isn't as familiar. Maybe they only watch the Premier League. Maybe they only watch, Liga or Bundesliga or La Liga. You get to see these other teams from different countries and you see the support that's there, and it kind of gets you a taste of what could come. So I do agree with you as a CONCACAF person. I think you're more so in tune with this because for me, I mean, again, we're both Canadian here, so we're watching this and thinking, okay, Gold Cup is here, cool, 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 cool. And then the teams who are in World Cup qualifiers are like, okay, so like, how's that going to help them kind of kick off one way or the other? But for the casual fan, I think the Gold Cup, I mean, the Club World Cup was
Too
always
many.
going to draw a little bit away. But I think not to say the sickos were watching the Gold Cup and then the casuals were watching the Club World Cup, but it kind of does feel that way from a CONCACAF standpoint. But I don't think that's bad per se. I think as it's winding down, that'll be more interesting to see kind of how it shapes up. But I think both have kind of performed out as I expected them to. So I'm not sad by the Gold Cup draw. I think Gold Cup always will have issues with how it's ticketed. Right. It's the same thing we saw with the
Yeah.
Canadian Shield tournament where it's a double bill. So if you're Guatemala, you're buying the tickets for both games because you're going to support your side. Where I think you could possibly, I think there is more of a crowd, and maybe they need to go back to it and see if it'll work. Of the single game ticket, the single game bill to see if they can recoup that. Because I do think you could create an event. Maybe that means it's more stadiums. If they want to do that or not, that's up to them. But I do think there is a market, especially for the Gold Cup, for national support for those teams, right? Where you get the opportunity to be able to come out and support. I also think something I wish they would have done here was had more locations, right? We got one game that wasn't in the US, which was Vancouver. Now, do I think Canada would have done better if they hosted all three other games? Of course I do. Of course I do. But we've seen the Gold Cup do a group in Costa Rica. We've seen them do a group in Jamaica. And especially with the year coming, with the World Cup coming next year, I think they missed a great opportunity to do something like that. Even if it was, hey, we're gonna put Mexico, we're gonna put Group A and we're gonna put Group A in Monterrey. They're gonna play all their games there, and then we're gonna put Group B, our group. Yeah, we're gonna put Group B in Vancouver, and they'll all play there. Will that be fair? I think for the Houston games, or maybe at least give Canada 2 games before they'd go down, because I think ultimately, I think we missed an opportunity where we could have really built up a little bit more energy and more buzz for it. But that's just me on a rant. But I don't know. You think they could have done something like that, or you keep it as it is, status quo, and the likes?
I would have liked to see something like that, but I think then you might get the smaller nations complaining that why don't they get home games? Why don't they get more involved? Right? I think that would become an issue, but I think it
Mhm.
has to have some kind of a change, some kind of a swing to move some games out of the states more often, get some eyes on Mexico, Jamaica, Panama, Canada, give games around to the region. But of
Mhm.
course, the big factor is always going to be money, is always going to be eyes and stadiums when it comes to this competition. Unfortunately, when money is a big factor, you play it in the states, and that's going to be the big turning point, right?
Mhm.
Which is very unfortunate, but we saw with the Club World Cup, you put the first one in the states, and that's where the money's going to be. So it just makes sense that it doesn't surprise me, but I'd really like to see games in Vancouver, in Montreal, in Monterrey, in Mexico, and just spread the game, spread the support, and you get more of the region involved in the competition as well, and just get more eyes on the game in general.
I still don't know why we can't. I will continue to beat this drum. I think they can do it. It won't be a country, but I think you can do like a Central American bid Gold Cup. I think you could do a Caribbean Gold Cup where every instead of saying, okay, Jamaica or Costa Rica, you need 7 stadiums. And I think Costa Rica might be closer to doing that. You say, hey, share it with Guatemala, share it with Honduras and El Salvador, right? Share it with Nicaragua. And then all of a sudden, depending on if you can get those teams in, now that might mean crazy idea, expand the field potentially. Could we get the Gold Cup instead of staying at 16 to maybe 24? Now, I know crazy talk going to 24, but I don't think that's a terrible idea. Especially then you have those teams that are there, they're qualified, they're improving, but then you get to see some of those teams because I think there's some sides who didn't make this who could have made it good and actually added to it. And then you spread that around. Then you have the Mexico, Canada, the Panamas, and the US's. They're in their groups, but then maybe that gives like a Costa Rica a chance to really, stretch your legs and show their mettle. That maybe that gives Dom Rep the opportunity to say, "Hey, yes, we're in a tough group, but we can do more than just 1 point." Right? Maybe that's a Curacao gives them the opportunity to say, "Hey, we can play these teams and do well." I think I wouldn't be opposed to an expanded field of the Gold Cup, but then also regional bids. Like, let's see the Central American teams have a joint bid. Let's see the Caribbeans have a joint bid. I think that is more than manageable. Now, if you want to argue about the security of it, sure, we can have that conversation. But in terms of pitches, and then that would take a lot of pressure off the federations instead of saying, hey, you need 7 stadiums for a small country. You just need to make sure one is up to standard and then you're good to go. I would be fully supporting that. That is I. But we're here to talk about, we're not talking about next year's Gold Cup or 2 years from now Gold Cup. We're talking about this Gold Cup. We've liked the game so far, and let's kind of talk about what we've seen group by group, kind of going through it. We are here on SofaScore, so that is where we're taking the majority of this. If you're on the rewatch, this is where we're getting it from. So, Group A, we had Mexico topping that group with Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, and Suriname tied in third and fourth with 1 point each. This kind of group kind of went as we expected it, though I think I was hoping we can get a little bit more from Dom Rep or Suriname. But I think though Costa Rica and Mexico have the 7 points, I think all the games were tough. No game was, this wasn't a walkthrough group. I think the US's group was more walkthrough, but I think this was a very competitive group. What stood out to you in Group A for you?
That this turned out to be the group of death. It was a very fun group to watch. Every game was close to some extent. I know Mexico, I can't, it was Dom Rep or Suriname. They beat, was it semi convincingly? I think it was a 3-0 win. There were so many goals in this group that it almost blends together with some of the games. And that game between Costa Rica and Suriname was just end to end. So many goals, so much excitement.
Yes.
And I know they finished on 1 point respectively for Dom Rep and Suriname, but they definitely were sides that in another group probably would have finished in second or could have competed for second. If you throw Dom Rep or Suriname in the group with Canada, for instance, I wouldn't be shocked if they easily come second or walk through into second, or even with the States or even in the Guatemala group. I think both of those teams would have stood a chance at qualifying in a different group. When you have two powerhouses like Costa Rica and Mexico against each other, it's very difficult for those smaller nations to get out. And Costa Rica really surprised me of how well they did in this group. Yes, they had some close matches, and the way they played against Mexico was very impressive, I thought. Yes, they didn't overly create loads, but Mexico had lots of chances at certain points in time. But Keylor Navas stood on his head. They defended very well and did what they had to do to come away with a result against a Mexican side who is currently the best nation in this region. So in general, I was very surprised by Costa Rica in a way that they were able to take a point off Mexico, that they didn't allow them to top this group with 9 points. And as well, the smaller nations in this group just surprised me by playing so well, but unfortunately not able to get enough points to contend for those top 2 spots.
No, all valid points. I think Costa Rica, you see it. For me, they're like a cycle away. I think once you get past this, and I think they can still qualify for the World Cup, but I think you're going to see them start knocking on that top 4 door for CONCACAF. I think once we get past the 26 World Cup, I think they are that side. And that, again, that opening matchup versus Suriname, I mean, that game was just, I haven't had fun watching a game like that since, like, I think it would have been the first time when Qatar was just scoring goals and defending was an option for them the 2 Gold Cups ago. Like, that game was just fun and vibe. But then you see the pieces of it. You see the Brandon Aguilaras that you're like, okay. Alcacer is still doing his things. Like, okay, cool. Ugalde is like, yep, I'm still a legitimate 9 here. I'm still doing things. And then I think if you look at that group, if we're going to look at it, I think, again, Costa Rica is probably a cycle away, and you can see the pieces, but they are not a side that don't let their youth fool you. They are still a hungry side. So I think when it comes to the matchup versus the U.S., I think they are dangerous versus them. Mexico escapes through their group. And I don't know if escapes is the right word to use. I think they get the results that they needed, right? They get past Dominican Republic, where they kind of keep them at arm's length, but they can't put them away because Dominican Republic keep on pushing. Against Suriname, they get the 2 goals, but then they get good defending, some good saves. And against Costa Rica, nobody looks bad in that game, but no one looks good. They didn't have like the 3 solid performances. And so they get the win, they go through, and it's Mexico. And I was watching someone was saying this. I think it might have been Deadball. Deadball was just like, yeah, history kind of, it may have been him. I don't know. But history kind of went through versus what you were feeling in the moment. And that's true. Costa Rica historically always does well here, and they know how to navigate this. They made it through. Same thing with Mexico. I liked what I saw from them. I think, and maybe this is just me looking at the side, maybe because I've been watching Costa Rica like since they were that U20 cycle 3 years ago would have been. Maybe because I look at them and I say, yeah, I think they might be more dangerous based off their matchup going to the next round, because Mexico has Saudi Arabia, Costa Rica has the U.S., and not that the U.S. is more vulnerable. The U.S. hasn't shown that they're vulnerable, but the U.S. hasn't played aside. I think coming out of Group A, I think that group are a lot better suited, and they've been more tested in games, so that adversity won't necessarily bother them as much. I think they're well suited to win their matchups in the quarterfinals. But we'll get to the quarterfinals in a second. We're going to skip Group B because, I mean, we'll talk for years about Canadians, so we'll get to that later. Group C, Panama topping that group with 3 wins. Guatemala, I think, surprising a lot of folks with finishing second, getting their 6 points. Jamaica with a win over Guadeloupe, and then Guadeloupe going 3 L's. But Panama topping the group, I don't think surprises anyone. Jamaica going under to Guatemala, that doesn't surprise me. I've not trusted McLaren with this group. And whether you think the issue is more so the coach, whether you think the issue is the federation, the result is they don't make the quarterfinals for the first time since 2009, I think it is. And so I think we can wax poetic and say, oh, I won't be the person who puts out, a breakdown of, hey, this team failed to make it. I went through it with Ghana. So look, Jamaicans, you guys, I'll leave you alone for now. But Panama, Ishmael Diaz is scoring goals for them. They have a 9 now. If they have a 9 who's consistently scoring, they aren't a threat anymore. They're a fact. Panama is no longer a oh man, they're the good, but they're punching above their no. If you tell me they're going to get consistent scoring from Ishmael Diaz, no, they're a fact. They are solidly any one of the top 3 teams in CONCACAF they can beat. If you tell me that, and they're doing this without their 3 of their best players. Panama, I think, had the best group stage, especially when you look at the first win. They beat Guadeloupe 4-2. They get a tough win over Guatemala and then put Jamaica out of its misery. When you look at Group C, what kind of surprised you? What kind of went as you expected?
It might be weird to say, but my biggest surprise would have been Guadeloupe. Like, it's weird to say, but like they did a lot better than they competed in some games. They came close in some matches. And even against Jamaica, they should have gotten something out of that Jamaican game.
Yeah.
Like they didn't look a step behind, which is very sad to say for a Jamaican standpoint that Guadeloupe should have got something over Jamaica.
Mhm.
But it was fun to watch Guadeloupe as well. Like some of these smaller nations were exciting to see. They didn't just go out there and try to batter the crap out of Panama, for lack of a better word, like some other teams in Group B did. But Guadeloupe tried to play football, and at times they played some very nice stuff. They didn't just try to sit back, soak up pressure. They scored goals. They had 5 goals in this tournament. That's more than Guatemala, more than Jamaica. That They scored only 3 less in the States. Like they did well in this tournament, even though they didn't get a single point. And Jamaica, for me, didn't surprise me at all. I'm in the same boat with you. Steve McLaren does not inspire me at all. It's coming from a Man United supporter. Like, he does not give me any inspiration for this side. Like, you look at that Jamaican side on paper, they should be one of the best sides in the region. Like, they have some fantastic players on that team, especially Leon Bailey. You have a player like that in your team, you should be doing miles better and not letting a side like Guatemala beat you to coming second in this group. And I mean, we'll give a bit of a humble brag in our predictions. I did predict this group spot on. The only group outside of Group A, because I think Group A was a bit of a straight shooter for both of us. But you were a bit of on a safe side, but I know you were thinking the exact same as me for this group. I know you were.
Yeah, keep going.
But you didn't want to upset the Jamaican supporters in your channel, so I understand that. I had to be the one to cause chaos in the predictions, so that's okay. It worked out well for me.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah, I'm going against everything I said I was going to do. So keep going. Keep it going.
I'm very glad to see Guatemala went through because the last Gold Cup in the group with Canada, they did well, and it's nice to see them upset a quote unquote bigger nation in CONCACAF, even though Jamaica aren't playing like a bigger nation. Being able to get 2 wins, massively boost up their coefficient up the FIFA rankings is huge for a nation like Guatemala, and I'm very excited to see that for them because they played very fearlessly, and it's fun to watch the way they played as well, even though they had 4 goals and only allowed 3. and you smashed out of the park with Panama the way you described them. So there's not much more to say about Panama, but I personally have to think that for me, Thomas Christensen is pound for pound the best international manager in this region
Oh, of
by a
course.
landslide.
I was saying that after Nations League.
Oh yeah, you were saying that a long time ago.
Yeah, and even before that, I think the argument was there. I think like Guatemala to me reminds me of El Salvador the last cycle with Hugo Perez, right?
Mhm.
Where that side was tight. They were always ready defensively. They were quick on the counter. They were pesky. They were always prepared. I mean, we've seen where El Salvador is now. I don't think they are all those things. Maybe they turned up their pesky turners all the way to the top there. But Guatemala to me reminds me so much of that side. And I'm like, based off of the format, because it's not an ocho or a hex, they have a chance. They can cause some trouble for World Cup qualifiers. But Guatemala, I think, deservedly so, built off of their last World Cup, last Gold Cup, where I mean they topped their group. I mean, yes, you can say that's Canada bottled it a bit, but they topped their group. So they topped their group and then outplayed Jamaica, I think, in their game. They just couldn't really figure it out in the final third. Jamaica ends up winning that game. And then after that, they just continue to build and go. I think they are a side that reminds me of El Salvador with Hugo Perez, and they're going to be a problem World Cup qualifiers. Jamaica is Jamaica, right? I don't know what to say without going on to a rant of, well, I'll say what I said 5 years ago, which is just because you have access to a Whole Foods doesn't mean that you'll use it properly. But that is all I'll say on them. I think they need to really go back to the drawing board and figure things out, because at one point we looked at them in World Cup qualifiers. They had Trinidad, they have Bermuda, and they have Curacao in their group. And at one point, you looked at it and said, they're not going to bottle this. After the Gold Cup, I'm looking at them and saying, I think nothing is impossible at this point. Nothing is impossible. So they need to go back to the drawing board, figure that out, because I think they could be very much in trouble. And if they don't get it done here, there's a lot of questions to ask about the federation, the setup, a lot of things. But hey, that's all I'm going to say for right now. One day I'll be on someone's stream and I'll just let loose. But that's not today. That is not today. Group D. US tops that. They also go 9 up, 9 down. Saudi Arabia with 4 points with a win versus Haiti, and then a draw versus Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad they didn't disappoint me per se, but they left a lot on let's be real. Trinidad and Haiti, if they could hit the frame, if they could just hit the frame, it would have just been a full conversation of they could have been different. But Haiti is either scoring 6 in the game or they're not scoring at all. And we saw that breakdown from them. And Trinidad, the harshest thing about Trinidad is they had an opportunity to go through. Final minute, center back gets the ball off of a set piece. It's shot into it. It's him 1v1 versus the goalie, and he puts it off the crossbar. I mean, it was right there for them, but not able to do it. So the U.S. moves on as the Saudi Arabia. You're looking at Group D. What kind of stood out for you in this group?
Well, from one group I predicted right to another group I completely botched. I completely got this one backwards, and I'm fine with it because it's good to see the states are in the knockout rounds. It's just good for CONCACAF as a whole. It surprised me they got 9 points, and with how easily it was done. You mentioned that Trinidad failed, Haiti didn't play up to expectations either, and it was simply down to finishing and their quality in front of goal. They could have had some great games. They could have had a chance to go through if it wasn't for the lack of their finishing and quality in front of the net and in the final third, which really put a dampener on this group because this looked like the group of life, like you called it in the predictions video, of a group of death. And it really never looked to be an exciting group throughout it. The games were kind of probably, I'd say, the most dead out of the entire tournament, like Group D, Group dead. As excited as I wanted to be to watch this group, the games were pretty well boring. The Saudi Arabia group games were pretty quiet. You had 2-2 games throughout it. You had draws. They only had 2 goals, 2 against. It was nothing really exciting in this group, but it was fun to see your states got through, even from a Canadian perspective. Like, it is good to see them get out because now they're going to have a challenging game in the knockout rounds. And Saudi, I would have loved to see Trinidad. I would have loved to see Haiti go through. You want to see a CONCACAF side go into the next round. But Saudi realistically are a World Cup contending nation who are going to be or thereabouts and are going to give a great test to Mexico. But in general, I was quite surprised just as a whole with how poor this group performed. And I think my biggest surprise in this group would be the states that they came first and how easy it was, but they made it look very difficult at times. Like, they barely got past Saudi, having to score a free kick that has to get ruled on by VAR from inches being onside. And some other games where they weren't overly easy. Like, they didn't make their games look easy by any sorts. And yes, Canada didn't make their games look easy in some sense either, but Canada got past their group relatively easily as well, just not with 9 points.
No, that's true. And let's talk about Canada's group.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's get to this. This is where we're getting to our notes, our notepads. I got my trusty notebook right here. We're ready to go. We got our notes.
Ready.
We're gonna talk, but Canada.
We got in the comments first, though.
I think we're gonna get to the. I think the comments we'll get to a little bit afterwards because they pertain a bit more to quarterfinal matchups. But
I got you.
Canada, yeah. So Canada finishes on the wrong screen, of course. Finishes first in their group. They top the group with 7 points. Honduras with 6. If you told me that after the first game, I would have laughed. But I mean, that's the turnaround right there. That is the turnaround. Honduras had the matchups that got them up for it. Curacao, I think that team, they had opportunities. I think I put them in the same category as, say, Trinidad and Haiti. If they were a little bit more clinical, they are going through. Now, maybe you look at them and say, well, maybe if they win the Canada game, which some would say they should have won, others would say they shouldn't have. That game was that game. If you had complaints on each side, but that's there. And then El Salvador, it was just I don't know what happened to that side. But this was not this was not the Hugo Perez El Salvador that I was used to. This was not Eric Zavleta back there. Like, this was not that El Salvador side. But they made their teams feisty. They made the teams beat you. They drew, right? They drew Curacao, and I think Curacao looks back at that game and says, if they get a goal out of that, if they get a win out of that, then they look so much better here. And then Honduras, again, a good turnaround. But let's talk about Canada. 6-0 versus Honduras. I think at that point we're thinking, okay, yep, we're here. Let's get these 9 points and let's go. And then the 1-1 draw versus Curacao, which starts off well and ends. And then the El Salvador matchup was get your points and get out. Please, we don't need any more. How do you evaluate Canada's performance in the group stage?
In general, I think it was a success across the board. Like, you beat the biggest competitor in this group very convincingly. You had one of the best, if not the best performance we've seen under Jesse Marsch, quote unquote, since he wasn't on the bench. And then you move into a game which is a hard one to break down. You had a lot of changes in that game. You have a flight from Vancouver to Houston. You're playing in a crazy, extremely hot game, which they're all excuses, yes.
Yeah.
But Canada just, for lack of a better word, didn't have the chemistry, didn't have the composure to get across the line and win the game. But in the same sense, they still battled adversity to get a result when in other points in history for this nation would have capitulated and probably lost that game 2-1, 3-1, right? So in a way, I am quite glad we managed to get a result from that game when you play so poor. Because like we talked about, it's tournament of football. You get the results, you have professional performances, and if you're playing a poor match in that day, as long as you get your win, as long as you get those points on the board, it's a success. It's still good. You walk away with your points. There's no major losses outside of unfortunate injury. But it's still a positive step in the right direction because eventually we were going to have that stutter step under Jesse Marsch and not have that incredible result every single performance. So the way I look at this group is it was a success across the board outside of having 2 injuries and losing 2 players in this group
Uh,
stage, and being able to get across by actually playing a beautiful style of football in your only game that you were really able to play football in against Honduras, I think is a
uh.
major success.
No, I think that's fair. That's a fair way to look at it. I think again, I think the group stage is a success. Is it a rousing success? I don't think so. I think you could have got 9 here. In the same way, I think they could have ended with 6. That Curacao game is such a toss up to me because the first 25 or so minutes of it kind of looked good. Once you got past that, you started to see kind of the kinks within that 11. And then and I said it in my recap, I just felt as if Curacao was just like, yeah, we're just not going to try to pass. We can pass through you, we can pass, but we're just gonna attack your center backs and see how you handle that. And I don't think that pairing did well. I think that pairing struggled a bit with it. And then eventually it just reached by the time you decided to try to take the game over and try to calm the game down, that the speed of the game, the flow of the game was what it was at that point. And so, yes, inserting Metri Chuanyao in the second half helps a bit. But at that point, Curacao was like, we're just going to keep doing this until it goes. And then you get one bad bounce. Basong misses it. I think he played a good game outside of that. And then you're going back and it's a tie game. And if you're a Curacao fan, you're saying, yeah, I mean, that one, the goal that we scored earlier that you said was offsides, the other goal that we scored that you said was offsides, we should have won that game like 2-1, maybe 3-1. And the Canadians are like, Illawarra ran out of the box. The man ran out of the box with the ball and went like, it was like, pure, we saw it. So on both sides, I get the arguments for it. So that's why I'm not sure how I look at that game in a vacuum. And then you have the injuries, right? Ali Ahmed comes in and then he's out. And you're just like, oh, not like this, please. Osorio doesn't play a minute. He goes out, and that leaves you with in terms of, was this the right call to bring him, right? I would have argued probably not, because he's not been healthy this year for TFC. The same with Richie in that conversation. And then you go to the El Salvador game where you don't really know what to make of it, but they got the 3 points. So I'm happy. I am happy. I'm not disappointed in any way. When you look at this from a Canadian perspective, who really took advantage of their opportunities here? I definitely have some names, but I want to hear you in terms of which Canadians really took advantage of their chances in terms of coming through in the group stage.
I think there's quite a few Canadians probably rose their stock quite a bit through this group stage, mostly in the midfield. Like, I think you have to look at Mathieu Choinière. The way he came into this side and kind of just took Stefan Eustáquio's role and said, yeah, this is mine. I'm his backup now, no matter what. This sixth position is on lock to me, which I was very surprised but very happy he did that, because for so long, every time Eustáquio is injured, every time he's not available, there's that major question around who the six is. Can Ismail Kone fill that gap? Can Sam Piette in the past come in and fill that gap, which is long gone? But there's always been that question around who does it for Stefan Eustáquio. Mathieu Choinière came in, defensively was a rock, controlled games. His passing was exquisite through the most part. Against Curacao, it was hit and miss. And especially in that first half against El Salvador, but everything was going south against El Salvador. But the way he was able to get a hold of the ball, some of his passing through the lines, especially for that opening goal against El Salvador to Jonathan David, was just a perfect pass that he was able to play. And it was very exciting to watch him in the midfield because he was very composed on the ball, very calm on the ball. And I think hopefully that can rise his stock with Grasshopper a bit, and he can help work his way into the starting lineup once again. And defensively, Luc de Fougerolles had to have rose his stock a lot, because the way he plays and how good he is in the ball is wild to think for a 19-year-old. He definitely has to get a move away in some capacity on a loan from Fulham, or start and earn some minutes off the bench for Fulham, because the way he played for Canada, not just in the Gold Cup but also Canadian Shield, he is our lock for our third best center back, or could work his way to play alongside Bombito. Because when you saw Waterman, he was good. alongside a Cornelius, alongside a LDF. But when you put him alongside Kamal Miller, they just both don't look like they're up to the task, which just shows how ready Luke DeFugerol is for that first, second, third, or for the second or third role, because no one's beating out Bombito. But those two massively rose their stock. And there's another player I could say, but I'll leave that one for you. And there's probably a few others, but it was a good group stage for players that stepped up and tried to take positions and prove themselves in this roster.
No, to echo what you're saying with Luke DeFugerol, I feel like he's a player who understands the temperament of the game that he's playing and adjusts to it immediately. Right? We saw that in the Canadian Shield. He gets into the Cote d'Ivoire game immediately, hard tackles. Like, this is the game we're playing. All right, this is the game. We gonna dance like this. We gonna dance like this. It's like, okay, yeah, I like it. I like it. And then you see when he's playing against Curacao, you're seeing, okay, trying to find the temperament when he comes into that game. When he's playing, and he doesn't come against Curacao. That whole thing. How many subs do you have?
Oh God,
that was a whole thing.
Let's not go back to
that. Positive vibes. But no, I think against Honduras, against El Salvador, you see him as a player who understands the type of game you're playing and plays that game. And so I think that's true. I think he's definitely should get more minutes. I'd almost would argue maybe he feels like a type of player, and I think I agree with someone like Daniel Jebison as well, where it's, yes, you can go up and down the English pyramid, but it might actually suit those players for different reasons. I think get a player like Jebison into a more technical league where he has to continue to work on his technical ability, because you see the raw traits. Those are there. But for Luke DeFugerol, get him playing I think he's up to it technical as well as physically, but get him somewhere. Like, I would love to see him get like a move to, if he could get a move to because we're saying everyone to Belgium, send him to Belgium too. Send him to the Belgian league and just have him play against men and be a center back there, because I don't know if he's up to the level. We'll find out. But I technically keep on improving that. You can never not be bad at that. But I think physically he can handle himself. He might not have maybe the frame yet, but I think get him into a league where he's playing big, meaningful minutes, like a mid-tier team somewhere, right? It doesn't have to be the Belgian league, but get him somewhere where he's playing minutes again and seeing and playing that, because I think that'll do him well. I don't know if he pushes into, because I think the only person he would push into the 11 with would be if he replaces Cornelius, right? I don't think they take off Bombito, because I think Bombito's pace matters the same way that I think Davies as a fullback, you want that there, because you need that get out of jail free card of, what? There's a counter? No, they can run. We're good. You need that back there. So I think he definitely has done a good job there. But yeah, I think he did get a move outside of England somewhere where he can just continue to develop, but then also play against some other grown men. Now, maybe he can do that in the pyramid, but I think he should move out of that as well. You mentioned Nico. Did you mention Nico? No, you said Mathieu Choinière. Choinière to me is a player that, and I think this is where I'll put up Chef Man's comment here. Choinière and Saliba in the midfield, Seeger on the right wing, Buchanan on the left, maybe. I don't think they can play a game without Choinière starting. If Eustachio's not there, I think Choinière needs to start. And it's not per se, I think they have a lot of solid 8s in the program right now, whether it's Saliba, who's an 8 to 10, Kone's an 8 to 10. I think Choinière, give yourself that defensive base, give yourself that 6, and then let that other center back, that other midfielder go out and be creative and support, because I think defensively, give them that extra cover, because especially against Guatemala, the counter is going to be very much a thing that's going to be where Guatemala is looking for, the pass through. And if you have someone who can disrupt that and be in good positions and protect your back too, as you're probably pinching up your center backs or your fullbacks in that situation, I think you need to start Choinière in the next game in your middle. And then Nico Seeger, I don't know what else he could have done in this window that hasn't really surprised us. He's looked good as a fullback. We finally got to see him in the middle, and he looked good there too. I think we've reached the point, Lane, where we're saying, have they earned a spot into the starting 11? Are we there yet? I mean, to me, I think we have three. We've seen 3 games, guys, maybe 4, maybe 5, but we've seen a limited sample. Let's get everyone healthy, and then let's have that conversation. Because I think when everyone is healthy, where do you fit all your players who are playing well? It's a great problem to have if you're a coach and as fans, but I think even in the starting an 11 for Canada, I don't know what's really open outside of fullback, and not fullback, no, outside of winger, outside of fullback. I think Davies is not. No, I'm not going to do that. No, I don't believe in that. I think Davies play him as a fullback.
He's a winger.
Okay, you can get off the stream right now. You can no, but in all fairness, I think you can put any. I've heard that, and I've had these conversations where people say, "Put your best 11 on the pitch; they'll figure it out." I don't not subscribe to that. I understand the logic for it. I also understand the logic of put me somewhere I'm comfortable and familiar with, so that I can just go play my game without thinking. And I think that's what you need to do. And I think if you look at this 11. I think the goalie is St. Clair at this point. I think your back line is still set, though the Fougeral is knocking. He's starting to knock, but it's Johnston, Bombito, Cornelius, and then Davies when he's healthy. The midfield, I think it is Stachio. Maybe the second midfielder is a conversation. You hope it's Kone, but then you have a Saliba, you have a Schwenyao, you have you have a Seager that's there. I think Tajon's window has reaffirmed his spot as that winger on the one side. I think the other side, you can have a conversation where it's maybe you think it should be Schaffelberg, but he hasn't necessarily shown well in this Gold Cup. Then if you remove Schaffelberg, you would hope it was Ali Ahmed, but he got injured, so you wait for that. Jaden Nelson has looked good in moments and spots, not fully. And then you're waiting for Liam Miller to come back from injury. So I think maybe one midfielder, one winger, and then whoever's going to be your out-and-out 9. Those are the points that you're looking at, because I think Joe David is there. And the question is, do you want a Promise up there, or is it a Kyle Aaron, or is it Tanny for this point? I don't think we've seen enough from Jebison, but from the pieces we've seen from Jebison, I don't know if he's going to be pushing. He would need a big year, but I mean, let's see what happens. I don't think coming in that's a tough. Like, I think Jebison's Gold Cup will be at this point is incomplete, right? Because we've seen him for one half in a game where they were basically playing on the power play for the second half, right? I mean, I was jokingly tweeting, shoot the puck, but like they were on the power play for the second half. So, what do you want him to do at that point, other than he was basically the big defenseman that you put in front of the goalie to screen the goalie, hoping, and then he got a few flick-ons here and there, but you can't really see. I think realistically, give me a game where I think he would have done good in the Honduras game, because that was a little bit more up and down. I think he's better suited in that type of a direct game, but he's your 5th striker of the strikers you have here. So there's nothing wrong with that, but that's kind of where he is. And if he's the 5th striker, and it doesn't help that Jason Russell scores a brace in the MLS this weekend, Theo Bair is still a thing. So, like, he's got to figure it out. He's got a year to figure it out. And there's a lot of other players who are going to push through. So let's see what they can kind of do. Let's get to these questions here, because I think, do you guys think Seager plays right wing next game? Do you? What do you think?
I hope not. I know he can play there. Like, he's versatile to play right mid, right back, right wing, but his position's an 8. His position's a 6.
Yeah.
Like you say, play him where he's comfortable, where he's going to get on the ball. We've seen Seager's best ability is controlling a game, being able to play those nice intricate passes along the final third, creating a goal for Tajon, scoring his first ever international goal himself. That's where Seager plays his best football. And we have 3 wingers still, albeit we've had an injury to Ali Ahmed. But Tajon's a lock at right mid. I don't think you can take him away from right midfield, even though he's interchangeable to play at left, which we saw against El Salvador. But play Tajon at the right. He's going to start there. Alistair Johnston's back. You're going to be playing an actual footballing side against Guatemala, which is crazy to say in CONCACAF.
Yeah.
Ali Johnston's going to be bombing on and giving those overlaps for Tajon, and we're going to see proper football with Tajon Buchanan and Alistair Johnston on that side. So I don't think you'll see Nico Seeger start at right mid or right wing. It wouldn't surprise me either if Jesse Marsch wants to fit him in, but I don't think there's a case to start him over Tajon Buchanan right now. But it wouldn't shock me if he starts at the 8. That position's really up for grabs right now between him, Saliba, and Isma. But I think it was after the game Jesse Marsch said something along the lines of we were able to rest players. So that might have been directed towards Johnston and Cornelius coming off at halftime. Or that could have been directed towards Kone not starting either. So that could be determined that Kone might get the start from that. But Seeger, for me, deserves to start at the 8 next to Choinière.
I think that could be interesting. I think Chef Madigan coming to say maybe Seeger and Saliba.
Yeah.
I think either Choinière or Seeger need to be starting, and whoever else you want to pair with them is fine. If you want to go both, that's fine. I think that's fair. I think Saliba's done well enough. I think if you're looking for a midfielder to play out wide, I think Saliba's probably your best choice to do that, in my opinion, out of the midfield. I'm not saying that's who you do. That's what I want you to do. But if I had to pick one of them to play out, if I had to do what they did against Mexico, or say, let's put Osorio out there. Why? But if I'm looking at it and saying we don't have the winger depth, then I'm saying, okay, I'm going to put him out there. But in the same breath, I have Jaden Nelson. I have Jacob Schaffelberg. I don't think there's anything wrong with you go back to the well with Schaffelberg and say, maybe this is the game where he puts it all together here. I don't know. Tajon's been in great form. I think the middle, it's either Seeger or Choinière. I think Choinière deserves it right now. Seeger does as well. The only problem I would have is if you try to freshen up your midfield, you go from your 2 best defensive midfielders all the way to your more offensive thinking midfielders if you sub them out. And depending on how the game is, if you're trying to see that game out, right, then we have a Curacao situation all over again, or we have a Uruguay situation where it's let's try to see the game out. Also, bomb forward, get the next goal. I don't mind that aggressiveness, but we've seen it burn them. So I think you can start one of the two, and then you put on the other one if you're saying, okay, let's kind of see this game out proper, or put on your center backs when they should have be. We don't need 3 strikers to see out a game. BLO. We don't need 3 strikers to see out a game. That is for me. But you're saying Seeger has to start, and that's fair.
That's
I don't think that's. I think that he has shown well. There's nothing. I think it's a fair conversation to have, and we have a day to figure it out before they put it out onto the pitch. So I think that's very much we wait and see kind of what it goes with there. DNA football, good to see you, man. You're Trinidad disappointed and Jamaica disappointed. I'm sorry. I send you supports from here. This is all I can send you. I can send you support from here. And so I think those are all fair points. Joe David had a decent group stage. I think the Honduras game just looked like he was trying to maestro it up. And then against Curacao, it kind of left. And then in this game, what can you take from the El Salvador game? Not to be continue to hammering on that. What can you take from it? But we get to the point where we're in the quarterfinals now. Does Canada still win the Gold Cup? That is a very good question. Do you think Canada still can win the Gold Cup? I think they can still win it. Will they is a different conversation, because let's get to these quarterfinal matchups. And Prince, I saw your question. Don't worry. I'm doing my best to talk about it because I know you have thoughts. But here we are with the matchups, right? We have USA versus Costa Rica, Canada versus Guatemala, Mexico versus Saudi Arabia, Panama versus Honduras. There isn't necessarily an easy pathway for any side, I think you could argue. Tell me what happens in the quarterfinals. I'll tell you who wins. But that's just a cop out answer. I think they can still win it. I think that Canada v Guatemala game is going to be the vibiest. I think from an experience and atmosphere, it's going to be the best game of the weekend. I think because the Guatemalan fans have just been vibes, and because we had them at the Gold Cup last time, you know what you're getting. But this is a better Guatemalan side and a better Canadian side. Like this to me will feel like playing El Salvador back in that era, like that El Salvador last, where they're tight defensively, they're going to be pesky, and they're going to get you on the counter, and they will beat you 1 or 2-0 and see that game out. They know how to see that type of a game out. When it comes to Canada, can they prove to be clinical, right? Because if they're going to play proper football, like we expect that they'll have the opportunity to do, or are you going to be clinical with your chances? You can't have Promise David missing free headers because you're just playing against a team that's tight. You can't have Joe David missing penalties. You need to be clinical here, right? This is where you make your money, right? Group stages are where is the showcase, but the quarterfinals is where you make your money. Let's go through this. Let's go through these things. So USA, Costa Rica. That matchup is at the top. I can see Costa Rica being the US here, just because of what we said at the top. I think Costa Rica have played enough matchups. Yes, they've shown some of their problems, a little bit defensively leaky. But I think they've played that Suriname game, not to say that the US is at the level of Suriname, but I think having they go through that adversity, I think they're prepped to go down a goal and then fight back and take the lead. I think they are better. They are ready for the matchup against the U.S., where we haven't seen the U.S. get punched in the mouth, for lack of better words. And so I think Costa Rica takes it because I think their games have prepared them for this matchup. When you see USA Costa Rica, what for you? Do you think it's going to go USA winning, or you think Costa Rica has a chance for the upset here?
I think every one of these games, there's a chance for an upset, which is very exciting for a Gold Cup quarterfinal, which should bring more eyes to this tournament in general. But Costa Rica against USA, I really do see there being an upset here. I think there's the opportunity to be an upset. And in the knockouts, especially in the quarterfinals, in any tournament, you usually see a major upset somewhere in the semis or the quarters. Every tournament worldwide in football, there's an upset somewhere in the knockout stage. We already saw one in the group stage with Jamaica and Guatemala taking second. I don't know where the upset's going to be here, either between Mexico and Saudi or USA, Costa Rica, but I think Costa Rica will be able to beat USA. Like you said, the resiliency, adversity, they went through a tough group, a very difficult group where they were pushed to the edge against Suriname, played very well in multiple different games, and managed to get 7 points to get a result against Mexico. Is very impressive for a Costa Rican side who are really improving right now. And US wasn't really tested, barely got past against Saudi Arabia, and unfortunately Trinidad and Haiti, which you talked about earlier, didn't really show up to this tournament. So USA kind of cruised through their group. So Costa Rica going through that adversity, I have Costa Rica advancing into the semifinals.
Interesting. And no, I'm not just hope. I know I've built up this reputation that like I don't support the US here, but like I haven't seen them be. I'm banking on the fact that Costa Rica is a little bit more battle tested, and I'm saying in this game, Brandon Aguilera, I think I'm going to get a big game out of him, and I think that's where they're able to go through.
You all day.
But yes, I understand why you think, hey, that is where it is. So I get you on that. We'll leave Canada, Guatemala last. Panama versus Honduras. I mean, again, if you told me Honduras is making it through this group, their group after losing 6-0 to Canada, I would have said, I don't see it, but they've done it. They turned it around well. Luis Palma scoring that beautiful goal at the end. Though, I mean, I won't lie. I was like, come on, Curacao, do something. Do something, Curacao. And they didn't do the thing. But them versus Panama, who do you see topping out of that group? Because that's technically the first game coming up tomorrow. Can Panama continue its good form, or do you think Honduras is on so much of a heater that maybe they can surprise Panama and get through? I'll let you go first here.
Respectfully to Honduras, I think this is the easiest game to predict in the knockout stage. I'm not thinking it's going to be a breeze for Panama because Honduras can be. They've built up that form now across 2 games against Curacao and El Salvador that they might have had the confidence now. They might have that belief that they can go out and get a result against Panama. But we've talked about this already. Thomas Christensen's the best manager in the region. This team is now a fact. And I completely agree with you there, Prince. 3-1 seems like a legitimate score that could be in this game. Like, Panama are just that good now. I don't think there is a possibility they could slip up against Honduras. I'm not going to rule it out. But they're that good now out of the 4 big nations in CONCACAF. I legitimately think they feel like the team that's the easiest to say with confidence that they're going to advance into the semifinals. And that's no disrespect to Honduras, but unfortunately, when they did come up against a big nation in their group or a nation where they were going to be tested in their group, they capitulated and played very poorly. So hopefully that changes in the quarterfinals and we see a very exciting game against Panama, but I just don't see a world where Panama doesn't advance into the semifinals.
If you're telling me Ishmael Diaz is going to be scoring goals like this for this Panama side consistently, yeah, let's talk about re-ranking. After this tournament, let's talk about re-ranking the top 4 in CONCACAF, because there's a real argument where you look at Panama and you say, okay, Canada has gotten a lot of they're the best playing side. The U.S. have been like, what's going on? Mexico have won the trophies, and who have they been beating for these trophies? Panama. Right? And so if you're telling me they figure out the 9 situation without their best midfielder, without their other better players, and then you're saying you're going to add that, plus as what we've called the best coach in the region, man, let's have a real conversation. But then again, the top 4 here is weird, right? Where it's Canada recently have been able to get past Panama, right? Panama have always recently been past the U.S. The U.S. generally in this last chunk have been able to get past Mexico, and Mexico have always recently gone past Canada. I think it's a cycle of rock, paper, scissors. Paper beats rock, rock beats scissors, scissors beats paper. That's what it is. So, I mean, I do agree with you. I think on paper, this to me is probably the easiest one for me, not hesitating. I think Panama gets past. We want to go 3-1. I think it's 4-1. And it's not like a classic 4-1 where you think, oh, it's not close. I think it's a 4-1 where it's close. It's like it gets to 2-1, then it's 3-1, and a post later, then it becomes 4-1. Right? I think it's that type of a game. Right? And I think that's kind of where it is. And that's where I agree with you, Son. Imagine if Carrasquillo was there, we'd be saying the same thing. Plus, they have 9. Again, Panama is not a threat anymore. They're a fact. And so that is a thing. Mexico versus Saudi Arabia. That is such a. You could see Saudi Arabia losing to Mexico in the same way. You could see Mexico picking this game to be the game where they just do nothing offensively because there's nothing but a low block, and Saudi Arabia gets and then they're able to get a 1 chance and 1 goal, and then it ends. How do you see Mexico versus Saudi Arabia going? Because I understand where some people look at that game and say, I think Mexico wins it, but I can see a pathway where Saudi Arabia wins. How do you see that game going?
I'm in that same boat. I think this game could go either way, but Saudi Arabia in front of goal haven't been incredible in this tournament. Like 2 goals for, 2 against. It's nothing great, especially against a Mexican side who's going to be in a low block at times. They're going to be great defensively. On the set pieces, they're going to be immense. And it's going to be very exciting to see how this game goes. I don't know if it's going to be a barn burner for any instance, but this Mexican team has lacked the chance creation in the Gold Cup, especially as compared to the last iteration of a Gold Cup. This Mexican side just hasn't looked great going forward. Their center backs have scored goals. They look great on set pieces as per usual for Mexico. When you're talking about goal scoring and chance creation, it just hasn't been there. And then when you look at a Saudi side who are usually quite good defensively, they've only given up 2 goals all tournament. It's going to be very interesting to see how they play against each other. A side who doesn't had really not created any chances to a large proportion, and a side that doesn't give up many chances or get scored on a lot in Saudi Arabia. It'll be a fun one to watch. It won't. I don't think it's going to be the best game for a neutral, a side that's poor at creating chances, a side that doesn't really allow many goals. It's not going to be the most exciting game, but it's very hard to bet against Mexico here, the champions of the region. It's a Saudi Arabia side who hasn't been amazing in World Cup qualifying either. I wouldn't be shocked if Saudi Arabia wins this, but you have to go with Mexico to get in the semifinals, I think.
Again, this tournament has been oddly just with history, so I understand why you would pick that side, and I'm kind of feeling that as well. Um, I want to say probably Mexico because I think in me, not that I'm trying to look ahead, I would love to see that matchup where it's just okay, let's see Panama versus Mexico in the semis. Let's see how this one breaks out because I think they can both play, but we'll have to wait and see what it looks like. But in the same breath, I could easily see this being Panama versus Saudi Arabia because Mexico have been a little bit reliant on their set pieces. So, you know what? In saying that, I'm going to go Mexico because if Saudi Arabia is going to play in a low block, that means you're going to give up corners, right? And if you give up corners, you're giving Cesar Montes another opportunity. You're giving Johan Vasquez another opportunity, giving Edson Alvarez another opportunity. Like it's a stylistic thing for me, and I think that's where I'm going to go with Mexico going over Saudi Arabia, and then we have Canada versus Guatemala. This one, someone said something that was like, "This will be interesting." Prince Hood 3-0 for Mexico. Yeah, probably. That's kind of where I'm seeing it. So I was listening to someone. Someone said it's just Canada versus Guatemala. It stylistically maybe won't suit Guatemala because Guatemala played a team that pressed them in Panama. And though they only lost that game 1-0, they couldn't really build up well. And they didn't have as many opportunities, say, on the counter as they had, say, versus Guadeloupe or, say, versus Jamaica. Canada, you know, they want to press you. This will turn into one of those games, Dane, where whoever has the ball will will pass it to the other side and be like, no, you take it. we want you to do the thing, right? I think it's an interesting matchup that way. I think Canada takes it 2-1. I think 2-1 is the game that you get. I think probably Canada's able to get a goal off of some wide play. It's probably going to be Tejan beating someone 1v1, plays it into the middle, a late arriving fullback or center back or striker gets onto it. That's like a classic Joe David goal type of a game. And then it either ends 2-1 because we win it at the death or we hold on. But I think 2-1 over Guatemala is kind of what you're looking at here. What do you see? How do you see this game going?
I think this, not even from a Canadian perspective, I think this will be the most exciting one out of the quarterfinals games. Like you said, you got two very fun teams to watch. The Cinderella story of the tournament so far in Guatemala, a side who's going to be heavily supported within the stadium. It's going to be loud. The crowd's going to be back in Guatemala. And it's going to be electric game. Like, there's going to be two sides. It's going to be very quick, very fun to watch. And, of course, for the neutral, I think this will be the best game in the quarterfinals outside of the U.S. and Costa Rica, which I think could be a very good game as well. But for score prediction, I would have gone the exact same as you. I would have said 2-1 and 3-1 potentially. I could see it easily being a 1-1 situation. Canada gets a scruffy second goal. Guatemala sending it for that tying goal, and then we get a goal in the break and make it 3-1. I could easily see that happening as well. But especially, I think this will be a very cagey, a very tight game. And I think Canada will have a very professional performance to get over the line here. And I think it'll be, you don't really want to say a statement win over Guatemala because it really wouldn't be because it's a Cinderella side. But I think it would be a big win for Jesse Marsch returning to the touchline and getting that game to get his best team out there and hopefully playing some real football, which we've only seen in one game out of 3 matches so far. And if we see Canada actually turn up, I think it'll be a very good game to watch for both sides as well.
The game, and I don't think it'll be this open defensively. I just think the teams might be this, because I was going between 2-1 and 3-2. 2021, the Gold Cup, where Qatar beats El Salvador in the quarterfinals. It's Qatar goes up 3-1 or 3-0, and then El Salvador gets 2. I don't think Canada is giving up 2 goals in 5 minutes like Qatar did. But I feel like it's a 2-1 game where it's that tight, or it's like a game like that where Canada gets out early and then Guatemala just chip their way back and keep on fighting, keep on grinding, get the 2. And then if you're a Canadian fan, you're sweating it out. You're just like, Dane St. Clair, please save us here. But I think that you can get that type of a game here. So I wouldn't be surprised. 2-1 is probably where I'm staying. But then ultimately, 2-1 is where I want to go. But I could see it be like a 3-2 game where it's Canada goes up early, and then they just kind of keep them at arm's distance. And I think that'll be what it'll be. Make it fun. Again, I think the Guatemalan fans will always make that a vibe. I think that this will be the game of the weekend, with low key the U.S. Costa Rica matchup being this runner up. Because I think this Costa Rica side are young. And like I said, they fought enough. And I think the U.S. will be maybe the first time they face a little bit of adversity. So we'll see how they can react to that and go from there. But we are there. Let's talk more. We're 70 minutes in. Normally we'd be like, okay, 90 minutes ago, some extra time. Let's have some questions. But no, let's get to some of these questions and go from there. Steph, I see you over there. What I don't want is another Survivor Series match. Sir, Survivor Series matches are great. And depending on what Survivor Series you're referring to, I am waiting for someone to I'm waiting for Stone Cold's music to start and just see him walking down the ramp in a vest, just ready to go, and Stone Cold starring. I don't think we're getting that matchup, but I think it would be great if Canada can get this game done in the 90. I think Guatemala will make them work for it. Again, I keep on making that reference. They feel to me like that El Salvador side where they were just always prepped, tight defensively, and ready to counter with numbers quickly. And so because of that, I think it'll be a tough game. Maybe 2-0 is a bit too much. Prince Hood, you keep on saying it's going to be 1-0 based off what you saw in the Curacao game. And I think that's fair. That is a fair comp, because if you look at that Curacao game, there are some similarities between Curacao and Guatemala in terms of the long ball going or countering through the middle. I think that would be something that could be interesting. We'll get through these comments, but as we're doing that, think of what your ideal starting 11 would be versus Guatemala, because I'm going to give that to you. That question for you in a minute here. Let's go back to some things that we haven't talked straight. Yes, always. This is true DNA. All right. Prince said, I know you want this. Opinions on Jamaica crashing out of the Gold Cup early. It's not a surprise. I think for me, the team wasn't looks left, looks right, balanced. You take that for what it is. But I have just not liked McLaren in his setup against teams that are going to be caging, that are passing teams. I don't think he ever sets his team up well for them. And we saw that for Nations League semis and Nations League group stage. And we saw it in the Gold Cup. For whatever reason, teams that are better passing, better technical teams, they never seem to set up right. And is that a McLaren issue? Maybe. Is that a coaching staff issue? Is where I want to lean into more, because that's been a consistent problem I've seen with them. And that is something that's not just been this year. Their only good Central American game that they've looked good against was for me at least, this is just me, was when they beat Panama for their third place at the Nations League. I think that was their best game against the Central American side. If you look at World Cup qualifiers before, El Salvador, that game should have been a win, but they drew that. Honduras, They won one of those, but then should have been a win, but then they drew those. Mexico, other than the draw Nations League, Mexico has had the better of them in these games. Guatemala last year were a better side, but they were able to get the goal, and Guatemala just weren't clinical in the final third. Against Central American technical passing sides, they seem to struggle or set themselves up for failure. And that has been consistently a thing. So I'm not surprised based off of the group. Guatemala and Panama, they looked their worst. And then against Guadeloupe, like we said, they could have left that game with just 1 point, but they were able to get 3. So I'm not very much surprised by them. I am not very much surprised by that at all. All right, Guatemala fans, and the atmosphere will make it hard for Canada. Yeah, it's gonna be a good atmosphere. Some of those players, I mean, Schaffelberg played in it last year or 2 Gold Cups ago, so it's nothing new. So it'll be fun to see kind of what it is and what they do with that. But yeah, I think the fans will make it great. I think, like we said, for vibes, it'll be the best game, followed by I think USA, Costa Rica. Son, I see you rank TNT's Gold Cup campaign. Rank it. They disappointed me. I thought they could. I think 6-0 versus the US says everything. Because you could have lost that game, but it's how they lost that game. They lost that game as if like they made the US look like they were playing Martinique 2 years ago or playing Guadeloupe 4 years ago. Like they made them look like they were this cohesive bunch. And not to say that they aren't a cohesive bunch, but I think Trinidad came into this game where I wasn't sure what they were trying to do. I think that disappointed me the most, where they were trying to either try to show up the defensive work and then it failed, or maybe it was something else. Yes, you were in a hard group, but we've seen Trinidad give the US trouble, both in recently. We've seen them give stronger US sides trouble. Now, maybe it's a different coach, maybe it's a different mentality, and that's a fair point. But I thought that Trinidad would make the US. If Trinidad lost the game, I was thinking 2-0, right? Maybe a 3-0 where it's comfortable. But it was 5-0, and it wasn't even. You guys weren't in that game. And I think that's what disappointed me. If you were in the game, you're having chances, you're hitting the post, but then they're being clinical, it's a different game. But they weren't in the game. And so that's where I was very much disappointed. You weren't the worst side. I mean, El Salvador was just like, what are you doing? But yeah, and that's fair. That's fair. Home and Trinidad, away from home, we are not good. That's fair. That's fair. I can see that. I can live with that. I can live with that. So, are you ready, sir?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Ready as you'll ever be. You know what? We're gonna do this properly. We're gonna give you the tools that you need, sir. We're gonna go for the lineup builder here. Let's show this out proper.
Also for the question from Son, I'd say Jamaica. Just the new question on who had a worst Gold Cup, Jamaica or TNT. I'd say it was Jamaica.
See, now you're just trying to get you're trying to get points with your Caribbean base. Just, yeah, it was Jamaica because all the Trinidadians like, yeah, but like I will say the funny thing was just listening to them go back and forth and it's like, yo, do you see what happened in Trinidad? And then the next day, oh, so you lost to Guatemala, eh? We played America. Like we expected to lose, but you're supposed to be Guatemala. And it was just like watching 2 siblings yell at each other. It was yeah, that's where and that's I think a fair point to bring. I don't think anyone well, you don't think I was hoping Trinidad could do something.
I think you predicted them to get out. I think
I did predict them, so that's why they disappointed me. All right, so thankfully I didn't put too much money on it, but that's where my disappointment was found, and that's where it was.
And I should have put money on Guatemala.
Again, we can keep on saying it, but they are just a solid side. So Canada versus Guatemala. Let's do that. Alrighty. Who is your starting 11? And that's true. Expectations versus reality, I think, is a fair point to it. And that's where I would agree with you there. All right. So, Lane, you're starting 11 for Canada. Let's put it out there.
This is what I want to see, or what I expect.
You know what?
Expectations versus reality, right?
Yeah. Let's just go your expectations and then let's go reality. So let's do what you want, then what you think will happen.
I think goalkeeper is kind of a no-brainer. I think it's Dane St. Clair now.
Okay.
It definitely helps that we're in Minnesota for this game. Dane St. Clair is
Very true.
basically at home, right?
Yep.
Which I think that's a big factor for two of our players who I might have in my lineup. But Dane St. Clair, he's got 2 of the games in the group stage, which I think is a statement. Like, he got the bigger game. He got it at home against Honduras, got to play against Curacao. He was shaky at times. But I think he does save that Curacao shot if it doesn't unfortunately deflect off Zorhan and go in the back of the net. But I think that's an obvious choice right now. I don't know would you have chosen Dane over Crepeau personally?
I don't think I think the gap is so small for me, at least. I think I still rate Crepeau a little bit higher just because I think he has a bigger body of work. But right now, if you're going off of form, it's Dane, right? Dane has been in one of the better MLS keepers over the last 2-3 seasons. Though Crepeau's had higher peaks, I think Dane's been consistently on the rise. So I think I can understand why it's St. Clair. But yeah, I wouldn't have an issue either or.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think Crepeau's done more for the national team and bigger body work, and Dane's on form more. So it just depends on which way you want to look at it, I think, as well. I think the back line just actually, left back doesn't really choose itself, but I'd say right back, Alistair Johnston, right center back, Luc de Fougerolles, and left center back, Derek Cornelius. And then left back is where we have an issue, right? Does he go with Rich Larea, who is playing out of position but can play at left back? Or does he go with Zorhan Basong, who that's his primary position? And he, in my opinion, has played incredibly well since given the opportunity, especially if a lot of people kind of were doubting Zorhan getting the call up, didn't think he was good enough. I didn't even think he was good enough personally to get minutes or to be in a shout to start. But I really want to see Zorhan Basong start. That's who I think deserves a start, who should start. And it brings us back to the question of, do you pigeonhole someone in a position that isn't their primary position in Richie Larea, or do you put someone who plays his predominant position at left back at his true position? I think you have to go with Basong. And I think it gives so much more to the winger on that side as well, having a left-footed fullback who's able to give you an overlap, who's able to be there to play 1-2s and interchange. So I'd say Zorhan Basong in that left back role.
I think if he goes Basong, it'd be a bold choice.
Yeah,
I think bold. It could be. It's a choice where you look at it and say the logic I would be in agreement with, which is play him. If it's not going well, you have Richie on the bench, right? If Richie's struggling, what do you do? Right? Do you then have to swap him? Then you have to swap Alistair to the left, and then you put Seager as your right back. There's 2 things. So within that logic, I agree. I think right now he goes with Richie. If there's one thing that I've learned from Marsh is, like every other coach, they have their favorites, and when push comes to shove, those are the people that they're going to lean on. So I think Richie starts, though
who do you prefer?
I would prefer Basong because I don't need to learn anything more about Richie. I know what Richie is, right? Do I want to win this tournament? Yes. So do I go with experience over the unknown? This isn't the group stage anymore. I can't say, let's see how he does against this team. We're trying to win. So I think he goes with Richie, though. I think
Richie in there.
Yeah. I think logically,
our combined 11.
Yeah. We'll go with our combined then. Okay. There we are. All righty. All right. Middle.
This is the not so fun area of the pitch to choose about. Because I have no clue how he chooses that midfield, but I think the obvious lock is Tajon Buchanan and Mathieu Choinière.
Okay.
that I think is 100% certain who starts at those two positions. And left mid, I think he's going to go with Jacob Schaffelberg. Like you say, favorite, someone he leans to, someone he seems to go with when push comes to shove.
Mhm.
And Schaffelberg's done it in the Gold Cup before. We got to remember that goal he scored against the States.
Yeah.
And it just seems like something that's going to happen. But that 8 position, I don't have a clue who he's going to go with. He talked about he was able to rest players leading into that final match and against El Salvador. So does that mean he goes with Ejima Kone? I don't know. I think he's leaning. I hope personally he goes Nico Seeger, but I think he'll go Nathan Saliba.
Okay.
He got the rest too, which I think is a huge kind of tip towards his way as well.
Mhm.
What do you think?
That's fair. I think he goes Kone.
Yeah, you think so too?
I think he goes Schwanyel, Kone in the middle, and then out left he goes Schaffelberg, and then out right he goes Tejan.
Yeah, let's throw Kone in there. It's such a toss up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is based off what I think we see how Marsh will play, and I think that's where, based off how he's gone, when he's had to go, he's put those players. He's put Kone in these high pressure situations. He's put them in these games where they need to win. So I think Kone is the player that he leans back into. Do I think he's the right one? I could see him pulling on being low. Saliba, you're gonna get it here because I think Saliba has deserved it. But right now, I think it's a combination, right? I think it can go either way. The midfield is to me, I think either Schwanyal or Seeger are starting the other midfielder. It does not matter to me because I think there's enough there that it does not matter. Okay, Kone even back to the Copa was on the bench until the third place game. True. And then in the third place game, we were just like, this is see, this is the thing. This is why we love him so much. But I think that's fair. In that case, you know what? Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
He's doing it. He is doing it.
Because I think that would be a good player. Because I think one of our knights, let's not even pretend, as if it's not going to be him. Yeah, let's not even pretend.
Okay, yeah, you might as well just had him penciled in already. There's
Yeah,
no point
he's
in even
there.
saying his name. Should we even talk about Jonathan David? I don't think there is even a reason to talk about why he's there.
He's Canada's best player. Next question.
So then we're just gonna jump right to the next one, right in the deep end.
I think I know what he does here. And
this is back to expectations or reality. Is that what we're gonna bring this to?
We know who striker 3 is.
Do we?
Yes.
I wish we didn't. I wish we didn't.
We know who striker 3 is. And
it's not
right
who
now,
Prince is saying in the chat.
Yeah, I think he is. I think he is pushing. I think Toby is pushing. And I think Toby should be striker 3. But I think right now, striker 3 is Kyle Larin. I think right now, striker 4 is Toby. And as wild as it is, I think Marsh, if you asked Marsh, based off of the style he's trying to play, which 9 suits that style? It's gonna be Tanny. Now, if we could find him, it'd be great. But
even the website doesn't want you to put his name in there.
You're unbelievable. You guys are just unbelievable. Now I gotta go find him.
You know how to spell his last name? Come on.
Listen. I know how to spell. I just don't feel like it.
I don't blame you.
I think he goes Tanny. I mean, you have the feel good that it's in Minnesota, so he gets to play there. I don't think he's washed, Prince. I don't think Larin is washed. I think for the style that Marsh wants to play, I think Tanny suits that better because he allows him to have 2 9s that can press, plus 2 wingers who can press. Not to say that Kyle can't press. Kyle can't close down the spaces like Tanny can with his foot speed. Same thing with, I think that's why Jebuson's here too. Jebison may not be there fully. He isn't in his final form yet. But I think if you asked Marsh, like, to put down his best ideal 11 for the style he wants to play, who are your 9s? It's those two. It's those two until Toby takes it or until, Jebison scores 2 goals in a Prem. And then we're like, yo, that's 2 Premier League goals. Put them in. Because I don't think Larin fits it. I don't think Larin, I said this 4 years ago. Well, I said it 3 years. Well, it was 4 years ago. I think when we get to this World Cup, I think Kyle Larin has to be in the Lucas Cavallini role, which is you need a hold-up 9. You need a 9 that's going to muck it up a bit. That's what he has to be. If we get to 2026 and he's your starting 9, I think there's a problem. And I think based off of the style, I think he goes with Tanny. I think that's the 11 he goes with. Maybe he goes with Kone in the middle. But outside of that, I think that's your starting 11.
Yeah, that's what I would have gone with as well. I think I hinted at it at the start with the home game for Minnesota basically here, right? Tawny is exactly who I expect to start. Tawny's also that we have to remember his first dual national acquisition. He worked very hard to get Tawny into this team, into this roster, and into this association. And you could see, like you said, about Richie being one of his guys, Tawny is one of his guys. And I wasn't Tawny's biggest fan at first, but he plays very well at times. Like he will get you goals. Like he will score the dirty goals once in a while. Like it was a fantastic finish against Honduras that he had. Absolutely thunderbolted that thing into the goal. And sometimes he doesn't play the most exciting football. Sometimes he's there to press. Sometimes he's there to muck it up. But it doesn't shock me that he is one of Jesse's guys. It's been like that since day one. And on the Kyle Larin point, I wouldn't say he's washed now, but I'd almost look at him. Yeah, I don't like calling Kyle Larin washed. He is one of the best players to ever play in our history for this nation, especially look what he's done for us for goals, what he's brought this nation. And I almost look at him and Toby as a 3A, 3B, kind of like the goalkeeping situation with a 1A, 1B. I think Jonathan David's replacement on the pitch is Kyle Larin now. And I think Toby and Tawny are interchangeable in who starts right now. And we're trying to figure out who's the better option between Promise and Tawny. And also, Promise has never played CONCACAF football till this tournament. Like, this is his first awakening to CONCACAF football. And it is a huge dive into the deep end from Belgian football to CONCACAF football, night and day. And he would have realized that against Honduras. And if he played against El Salvador, it would have been just absolutely chaos more so. Or he did play against El Salvador, my pardon, but like it would have been more chaos for him learning how to play against a side like El Salvador than playing against Cote d'Ivoire, against Ukraine, because it's a different style of play. And when he's not used to that, it doesn't surprise me that he only had like 8 touches in that game or in the first half or whatever. But I look at that position as Kyle's not washed, in my opinion. I'm not going to call him washed because he isn't there. Because we do have to respect that he scored 7 or 8 goals for RCD Mallorca in La Liga. Yeah, arguably the best or second best league in world football. So it's not on par with the Premier League right now because of the quality of the money they have. But it is a very exciting league top to bottom. And when he's leading his club in goals, it's very respectable. And yes, Mallorca aren't a major side, but that is, we got to remember how good you have to be to play in one of the best leagues in world football. Like it still shows how good he is at his age playing in La Liga. Like it is really respectable how good he is. Like, I think we forget about that, right? Like, he's not scoring for Canada. He's washed. He's not good enough anymore. And for me, he's going to replace Jonathan David on that pitch. Kyle Larin is a good player at being able to hold the ball up at times still. Yes, he still drifts out wide and takes play out from the middle. and moves out wide too much, which we saw against El Salvador. But Kyle Larin can come onto a game at the end of the match, manage it, and play smart, especially defensively. Like, he can still press as long as he's not playing a full 90 or a full 60, 70 minutes. And if he comes on for Jonathan David, I think it's a great sub. But if he comes on for Tawny and plays next to Jonathan David, we'll then see them occupying the same space again and have that same Mexico problem all over again.
No, I think that's for certain that is the situation. And so for me, I think it's just a conversation of, okay, what are you looking for in the game? I think, because I think that's another conversation we can have later, which is who really is the Jonathan David replacement? Like, who is a player who can play stylistically like him? Because I thought it was Jason Russell Rowe. But if Marsh doesn't see it as that, right now your best option as a hold up, as a forward who can drop into the middle, is Kyle Larin, because he can hold up, turn, and he can send someone off. And I think that's where you could use, that's where like a Toby coming in the second half, if you swap your nines, or even a Tanny or Toby or even Jebs as just straight line speed. We're going to put this ball into space. Either your wingers or that other 9 going after it. I think that's where they could really work and suit and play very well. But that'll be a thing that'll come through. And yes, Guatemala ain't Ukraine. I agree. You need goals. They got goals against Ukraine. And so that's where I think they'll have a best. But I think playing a European side versus playing a CONCACAF side is the difference between playing a team like to use. It's the difference between playing a team that's outside your federation versus playing your neighbors. Your neighbors know you, right? The people in your conference know what you like to do. So those games are tougher because they know what they're going to take away from you. Teams that don't know, you're like, okay, that's cute. You can run how fast? Oh, you're that fast. Oh, it's 3-0 already. My bad. So I think CONCACAF is always going to be different because everyone in the region knows you and they know how good or how fast you are or how technical you are or you aren't. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think we will wrap it here. We've gone 90 minutes. 90 minutes is a game. We've spent a game with you.
And some
We've
change.
talked about, you're right. Hey, a few minutes of additional time. This is true. They aren't better than them. I do agree. However, there's a difference between knowing how to play you versus not, right? El Salvador isn't Ukraine, but Canada struggled to score goals against El Salvador, mainly because, what isn't Achilles? What is a tackle? You get it red.
Ukraine also didn't set up in a low block either.
This is true.
They tried to play football.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying Guatemala won't, but like you said, they know how to play Canada. They're going to sit in a low block.
Indeed. I think that game will be, like we said earlier, a game of both teams giving the other team the ball, saying, no, you have possession. No, I insist you have possession. No, this is our home game. You have possession. You're our guests. And I think that'll be the game. Close game. Prince, who you're saying 1-0. We'll find out, guys. The quarters start tomorrow, and we are going to enjoy them as that. So, Blaine, thank you for being here.
Of course.
On the right, I do agree. Tell him, Prince. Tell him. You got to start streaming. I've been telling the man, but he hasn't been doing it yet. But eventually, we got friendlies coming up. You got to get it ready for those European friendlies at the wee hours. You got to get set for that. But until then, guys, enjoy the Gold Cup quarterfinal matchups. On the Rice will put his stuff in the description. So if you haven't subscribed to him, get him there. He's trying to get to 700. I say get him to 1,000 before the end of the year. Get me to 2025 before the end of the year, please. Thanks, guys. It's our goal. I mean, I want to get to 5, but let's get to halfway or 2,500, whatever. Let's just math. I'm mathing numbers. But guys, thanks for being here. Appreciated having you. And as always, we're going to stop talking here, but enjoy the games of the Gold Cup. Let us know in the prediction what your predictions are and who stood out and who disappointed you in the comments below. And as always, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.